Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with FemVali? If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. The figure wearing a cloak ran across the forest. The figure ran wildly, staggering from time to time and was crying. Unable to see the rock, the figure was sent stumbling forward before falling to her knees and rolling. The hood fell off and the lady with the silver hair panted, her eyes closed. I really am pathetic, huh? She mocked herself before standing up. But before she can run, the glow coming from the area by the trees beside her glowed golden. The silver-haired 16-year-old quickly hid down the bushes and peeked. At the center of the clearing was a golden magic circle that spun. The runes were advanced, something she would have a hard time with casting. A single rune will drain her of her energy, and yet, the runes present in the magic circle were thousands, and they were spinning on all directions. There was a boy around her age with medium-length hair that was the color of brown, and he was kneeling back, facing the sky with his eyes closed, and he was panting. The girl quickly crouched down when the bright magic circle shattered like glass and the forest was once again dark. The girl breathed deeply, before coming out the bush carefully and slowly walking towards the man. The boy, who remained unmoving, suddenly flinched, making the girl fall back and squeal in surprise. The lady grumbled as she rubbed the back of her head, but soon became silent, and her eyes widened as a shadow made her sight darker. She looked up to see the man, looking exhausted, and fell over her. "Help me." The man whispered at her ear as her eyes widened, and she pushed the boy off him. He was completely passed out. "What's happening?" she asked herself. The girl's brows scrunched. The magic of the boy was completely depleted, so it was no wonder he passed out. The magic circle a while back was, after all, not an easy one with all that advanced runes and thousands of them at that. She stroked his hair, her cheeks reddening. The air stopped blowing and a peaceful silence descended upon the clearing. But this was soon disturbed when the boy sat up straight, his eyes half closed, yawned, and looked at the frozen girl. His eyes slowly widened as he flipped back and looked at the now standing girl warily. Before anything could happen, too many golden magic circles appeared in front of each eyes, and the girl closed her eyes and fell. Before she can fall, the boy caught her. "Sorry, I had to read your memories." "That's rude, you know," she said sleepily, her eyes fluttering open. The boy looked at her in amusement. "You didn't pass out. Normally, even devils will pass out with that spell." The girl smiled tiredly. "I am not just a regular devil, you know." The girl smiled at the boy who smiled back, and the area once again fell silent. Then the girl slapped the boy and backpedaled with a blush. "What are you doing?" "I am still young." The boy blushed at this. "No, I just caught you without a fell and read your memories to gather information." The girl calmed down and sat. "Good. If you have done anything perverted, then you would be a corpse right now." The boy laughed nervously before he opened his eyes and walked up to the girl. "I am from the past, nice to meet you." The girl was taken aback. "You couldn't start your introduction like that." She complained before sighing. "I am Vali Lucifer, nice to meet you." "That's what you meant by not being a regular devil, huh?" Vali grinned and nodded. "But you didn't tell your name." The boy gulped. I can't remember. Somehow, I can't remember who I am. I know what I can do, but somehow, I can't remember my name. I also can't remember why I was sent here and when I was from." Vali narrowed her eyes as the boy chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. He sighed in relief when Valia smiled. "Then can I choose the name for you?" The boy smiled. "Sure, you were the one that found me anyway. Then I'll name you Issei." "Issei Haidu." Valia stood up and grinned proudly. The boy cupped his chin and looked like he was contemplating on something. "I see. That's a strange name. I expected something normal, but I guess you are from a different time after all." So the boy smiled and walked in front of the girl, holding out a hand. "My name is Issei Haidu, a pleasure to meet you, Valia." The boy laughed with a smile. Valia blushed. Now that she knew the boy wasn't there to harm her, she calmed down enough to take in what Issei looked like. She was certain that if he was to go to the town, he would attract a lot of girls rather easily. His brown hair was messy, and yet, it looked as if it was modified by professional magicians that specialize in beauty, and his smile was unreserved and honest. His bright blue eyes twinkled with mirth and gentleness. And his mere presence brought her comfort, something she needed very much at the moment. Issei tilted his head and looked at Valia in concern. "Are you okay, Valia?" "Sorry," she stated before turning around and walking away. "Hey, wait up." Issei called out and grabbed her arm. "I'm sorry if I'm being a bother, but I am from the past, you know. I don't know where I am, or when I am." Valia turned around and Issei flinched. She was enchanting, like a beautiful elf in the forest of where he was from, only without the pointy ears. Elves were related to angels and devils after all. The moment he opened his eyes, he was enchanted with how her eyes that were bright blue like his sparkled in the darkness. Her hair was silver and with her pale skin, she looked like a princess of some higher race, greater than a human like him. He could sense magic around her, powerful magic. It was demonic, of course, but there was also something else that he refused to accept. It was impossible after all, for a girl that looked like her to be a dragon in human form. Issei chuckled reluctantly at his thoughts. Right. She sniffed. Issei frowned at this. Still beautiful but dull were her eyes. Tears were trickling down her cheeks and a sad smile adorned her face. The girl is pretty as you shouldn't be crying. Issei smiled gently and patted her shoulder. Vali smiled at this. Thanks. Her face darkened. But I can't help you anymore, Issei. I have to run away from this place. Why? Issei asked before quickly apologizing. I mean, I'm sorry. Forget I asked. It's rude for me to intrude in your privacy. Vali sniffed. Actually, if you don't mind, can you come with me? Issei looked surprised. Me? Yes, you. Is there anyone else here? You're right. That was stupid. Issei bit his lip as Vali giggled. Alright, I'll come with you, Vali. Vali blushed. Just so you know, calling someone by the first name is only for persons with close relationships with each other. Issei groaned. I am so sorry. How do I call you? Vali smiled. Don't worry, you can call me Vali. But you can't call others by their first name when you just met them, okay? Understood. Good. Vali started running, continuing on the path she was supposed to go through originally. Issei smiled at the girl. He can remember everything. But it was better not to tell her who he was. Issei ran up to the girl, but before he can proceed, an explosion blasted both of them away from each other. Vali's eyes widened. Issei, my father may have caught up from us. She screamed in panic. But her eyes widened when the dust dissipated and Issei was standing in front of her protectively against a man with long blonde hair and had his arms wide open with 3 thick books floating around him and their pages were constantly flipping. A huge red magic circle was behind his back and was spinning. Finally, after all these years, you finally appeared, my prodigious student. He spoke in a weird way and laughed crazily. His eyes were wide, like what he was looking at were the most amusing things he ever set his eyes upon. You have no idea how much time I have waited just to meet you again. Issei's eyes widened and a smile curved his lips. You really did that for me. Thank you, master. He said. Vali felt odd as she looked at Issei's genuinely happy expression and the sadistic expression on the man's face. The man in front of them was emitting a strange power, something like hers and at the same time, the opposite. Her eyes widened and she shook in fear. It was holy magic, the magic that is very lethal to devils and especially lethal to her as the blood of Lucifer ran through her veins. Issei, I think we better run. She suggested. She flinched when the man in front of them howled in laughter once again. Look, you stupid student, look. Even the lady who has no idea what's happening has better survival instincts than you. The man covered his eyes and his smile was wide. You better leave this dumb lad, devil. Normally, I would kill you right now, but I have some business to attend to with your Issei. The man laughed again. Vali shivered. That's just cruel, Mord. Vali froze as Issei, who was just beside her, got blasted by a large red beam that barely missed her by an inch. Her hair tingled at how close she was with the blast and she felt like she forgot how to breathe. Slowly, Vali looked behind her and was shocked to see that a whole path was created through the forest and the mountain at the corner of the trees was completely annihilated. The path of the red beam was steaming. Vali turned to the hysterically laughing man in anger. But before she could perform any attack, she was suddenly flying up in a very fast rate that she can't even scream. Vali turned around to see a man with 12 black wings. She knew this man. Let me go, Azazel. Now, Vali-chan. Stop squirming before I accidentally let go of you. Vali growled, what Vali-chan? Oh, come on. Don't tell me they didn't rub on you the Japanese honorifics. They sound cute, don't you think? And especially when in bed with a woman. Azazel chuckled dreamily. Vali slapped the fallen angel, you pervert. Let me go. Issei needs help. A psychotic man attacked us. No, you should take me instead. Vali stopped squirming at the expression of the fallen angel. It was serious. What do you mean? I just saved your life. That was obvious. But you didn't save Issei, so I have to save him. No. Azazel cut her off. I saved you from that boy. Vali laughed, what? That man, I doubt I could beat him. Maybe I could, but I'll eventually fall too. The boy is a different scenario altogether. Azazel looked at Vali in the eyes, I wouldn't stand a chance. The man laughed. That was amusing. I gained all this power for nothing. The idiot didn't even fight back. He flipped his hair and turned around, placing his hands on his hips and laughing. Useless. He said, his smile gone and a serious expression on his face. I knew he was always useless. I don't know what the idiot king saw in him. He started walking away, but then he stopped. I know a spell that could kill when I saw one. It looks like you weren't just testing me out this time, huh? A voice spoke with a sharp and amused tone. Mordred, how long has it been since Camelot? The man's figure shook. He turned around, revealing the same hysterical expression, and was shaking in laughter. That's better. Surely, the great warlock wouldn't fall so easily with an attack like that. The man's eyes widened. Ooh, angry now, are we? Issei looked at the man with glowing blue eyes. How long has it been since Camelot? Around 1,000 years or so. Maybe even 3. I don't really keep track of it. Garbage should be forgotten after all. Issei gritted his teeth. How dare you? Do you know what Camelot is now, Issei? The man asked, adding a mocking tone as he stated his name. Camelot now is a mere ruin that was the remains of a great kingdom ruled by an idiot king and protected by a foolish warlock. Issei fell to his knees. What do you mean? The man smiled sinisterly. Vali looked around the office of the fallen angel, Azazel. It resembled the office of a CEO of a big company, with a wall that was totally of glass, so she can see the whole city. She stood right in front of the glass wall. Behind her was Azazel, seating at his leather chair and was lazily stirring his coffee. Vali furiously turned around and slammed her hands at the table of Azazel, who whimpered at the spilled coffee like a child. Why did you take me here, Azazel? She demanded. She was extremely worried of the boy who had amnesia and she met a while back. The man who appeared in front of them was no joke after all. And by the aura of the man, he was there to kill Issei. Azazel yawned. Do you know the story of Camelot? Vali looked at Azazel weirdly. Of course, that's my favorite story. Well, I was reading it just to pass time. The words suddenly blurred, and the black blurs that were the words were arranged in an order that was different from before. At the same time, I sensed a great disturbance at the forest, and that probably was the effect brought by this Issei. Azazel looked at Vali seriously. She shifted uncomfortably. It was rare for her to see the man become serious. This meant the matter was something not to be taken lightly. Azazel grabbed a book of his inside the drawer of his desk and dropped it on his desk before opening it. The fall of Camelot has changed. The whole book has changed. The whole story has changed. Vali read the book and bit her lip. It did change. But still, she looked at Azazel skeptically. She took off the bag she had and grabbed a book of hers. The story of King Arthur and Camelot. She quickly flipped through the pages and to her shock, the events had changed. Azazel smirked at the girl's shocked reaction and turned around to observe the city. The humans believed that the story of Camelot was only fiction. But we, who are creatures of the supernatural, know better. This kingdom has existed. It was real. The holy kingdom of Camelot. Azazel spoke. Vali kept reading the pages of her book in disbelief. What were the changes? One is that Arthur was only 18 years old and that Merlin was like a little brother to him and was 2 years younger than him. The prophecy of the rising of Arthur was erased and Merlin disappeared before the betrayal. Vali raised her brow. What do you mean by betrayal? Oh, right. Apparently, the Knights of the Round Table were a bunch of 18 years old and consisted of King Arthur, his little brother and warlock, Merlin, and Lancelot, Gawain, Percival, and Lionel, who were the 4 female Knights of the Round Table and were also 18 years old only. Merlin was taught by Mordred, who was a lot older than Arthur, around 30. Azazel explained. What? A smile appeared on Azazel's lips. King Arthur, I hated him for being favored upon by the god of the Bible and even received the holy sword Excalibur from him. But now, the new timeline, the Knights of the Round Table who are actually mostly female. It's like he created his harem. Azazel was brought to tears. This is too amazing. Vali sighed. What betrayal? Sadly, his harem. Azazel cleared his throat at Vali, who cracked her knuckles. I mean, his knights, the 4 female knights and Mordred, the royal magician and teacher of Merlin, betrayed Arthur and killed him. Merlin wasn't present at that time. He just disappeared. A knock interrupted the two. Azazel stood up and opened the door. Vali watched the perverted eyes of the man and sighed. With that, the lady who walked in huffed at Azazel and sat across Vali. She had wavy blonde hair and green eyes. A pale complexion and a beautiful face. What is it that you want, Amelia? Azazel asked. The two were surprised when a tear trickled down her cheek. Azazel quickly grabbed some tissues and gave it to Amelia, who gladly accepted it. What's wrong? Azazel asked as he looked at his general. Along with Barakiel and Shemhazai, Amelia was one of the strongest fallen angel, and Azazel even suspected that she can defeat him in an open battle. Is it true? The story of Camelot has changed. Amelia asked, her voice, which was like a scared angel would have, quivering. Azazel nodded, patting her back. Yes. So he has finally returned, she whimpered. Who has? Vali asked. Amelia looked at her and sniffed. The little brother I loved and betrayed foolishly. You have a brother? Azazel asked. Amelia nodded, it was something I regretted doing. I don't understand. Azazel walked back his desk and leaned on it. That's because Amelia is not my real identity. Azazel grew curious of this. Amelia bowed her head in apology at Azazel. The story of Camelot you believe to be true is actually a spell casted by Mordred. Now that my little brother has returned, the spell wore off and the real story is now in front of you. In the fake story you believe to be real, I am Sir Lancelot, but I am Lady Vivienne, an ex-knight of the Round Table and Queen of the Lance. It started raining heavily. Issei was down the ground in despair, his tears falling along with the raindrops, as his heart was being tormented of the overwhelming turn of events. He gripped the moist dirt tightly, hanging on the faint traces of sanity that he had. It can't possibly be true, right? It was impossible for his beloved older siblings who taught him so much, loved him so much, and loved each other so much betray each other like that. It was impossible. Are you okay, my beloved little brother? Issei closed his eyes and tried to forget the face of Arthur, his older brother, asking him and smiling kindly at him. Surprising, don't you think? Your teacher, your older sisters, they betray your older brother and killed him in the most painful way possible. Mordred stood above Issei, before bringing down his foot on top of his student's head and pressing him down the moist dirt. Do you like the feeling, Merlin? Where's your magic now? Oh, great warlock. Where is it? Please punish the sinful knight of the Round Table. Did you know how much pain Arthur was in when I casted an implosion spell inside his vulnerable body? Imagine his eyes, full of pain at the betrayal of ours, the sisters he loved and the advisor he looked up to. Do you know whose name he screamed for? It was yours, Merlin. And you didn't save him. Mordred laughed hysterically. Take out Clarent, the other sword Arthur used. I melted it and turned it into this halberd. Beautiful, isn't it? Issei muffled his cry with the dirt as he tried to keep the sound of laughter out of his mind. He closed his eyes and endured the rapid stomping of the teacher he looked up to. He tried to forget the information that was given to him. He tried to remove the image of the betrayal out of his mind. But he can't. His eyes opened and they were glowing with power. Seriously, Merlin, this is disappointing. Can't you fight back a lit before he can finish what he was saying? Mordred was flung towards a nearby tree. He opened his eyes and saw only two glowing eyes. They too disappeared and the rain eventually. The area was clear now, but he can't see Merlin or Issei anywhere. Where are you, coward? Mordred spun his halberd. Once Mordred turned around, Merlin was standing. You are an idiot, you fell for that taunt. Mordred swung his halberd down. But he wavered when he saw the sinister smile on Merlin's face. It was like he was slow and Merlin was moving normally and smoothly. He cautiously grabbed the sharp of the halberd with his thumb and index finger, moving like a snake, before appearing in front of a wide-eyed Mordred. I'm right here. He smiled. Boo. A magic circle the color of gold appeared in front of Mordred's face and a smaller magic circle behind it and another behind this. The area was engulfed by a blinding light. There were 5 kingdoms in the time of Camelot. Vivienne begun. The kingdom of Reged, which was the one where I was the princess. The kingdom of Elmet, which was where the one you know as Percival who is originally, Svanhild, the princess of the kingdom and the queen of the axe. The kingdom of Dift where the one you know as Lionel is princess and is actually Leone, the queen of the bow. The kingdom of Anglia, where the one you know as Gwaine is princess and is actually Gwaile, the queen of the sword. And of course, the kingdom of Arthur and Camelot. The kingdom of Camelot eventually conquered these 4, but their princesses formed an alliance to bring the kingdom to its knees. We became the wives of King Arthur and he loved us equally and truly. He was the most dashing man I met and was as powerful as a seraph or a Satan, with Clarent and Excalibur in his hands. And of course, we loved him too. But I don't know, we were foolish and we did it still, with the aid of Mordred. Once we betrayed him and he found out, he could have killed us but he didn't. Instead, he gave us 4 a kiss on the lips, a bleeding last kiss for each of us, before he was taken from us. After that, Mordred ran off with Clarent and before he can take Excalibur, we broke it to pieces. We realized our mistakes but it was too late. The love of our lives was gone and with that, the great age of kingdoms ended. Vivienne wiped her tears away. But what about your little brother? Who is he? Vivienne chuckled sadly. The only 2 men I loved in my life was the love of my life, Arthur, and the little brother of his, and like a brother to us too, Merlin. The warlock. Vivienne nodded, again chuckling sadly. Merlin was the kindest soul I met, of course, because of the fine way Arthur raised his little brother after their father died. But when Merlin decides that someone is a threat to the safety of his loved ones, that someone is someone I pity truly. Vivienne stood up and walked to the glass wall, a sad smile on her lips. He hated it very much, so we used it to tease him, the very long title he had. It was Merlin, the greatest warlock of all time and the slayer of dragons, monsters, devils, and fallen angels. The downfall of kingdoms and the doom of armies. Merlin, the man who can use the magic of the 5 kingdoms. Merlin, the bane of gods and usurper of thrones. Merlin, the warlock who is thirsty for knowledge. Vivienne smiled. Warlock. Yes, a warlock. Unlike the stories you know where Merlin is an old wizard, he is really a warlock. A wizard is a master in magic only, while a warlock is master of all. Vivienne turned around and looked at the two who listened intently. Like his brother, he was handsome, with his brown hair and piercing blue eyes, he can charm any woman. And he loved women. Vivienne chuckled, but unlike Arthur who would kiss us for if he felt like it, even in a negotiation, Merlin was a gentleman. And while Arthur was the king of Camelot, he was the king of all weapons and all magic. So you want to do it like that, huh? Mordred laughed, blood trickling down his mouth. Issei remained standing, his face the expression their King Arthur called the smile of the slaughterer. Mordred growled, stop acting like I am weak. Mordred created a train of magic circle the size of wheels all going towards Issei. Don't forget that without me, you wouldn't know what magic is. You wouldn't be able to cast that spells you use. I was the one who taught you how to cast fireballs, the one who taught you the magic of Camelot. I was the one who turned you into from a dumb idiot to a magician. Mordred released his hold on the magic, and a blast was created. He smiled. Surely, that blast would get even Merlin. It was a blast that could remove a single wing from winged creatures like angels. When the dust settled, the whole area was destroyed, but Issei was still standing, not even his clothes were damaged. The unnerving smile still remained. In a blink, Issei was in front of Mordred whose legs weakened. No, Mordred, you are not weak. Weak is a term too strong for you. Issei looked at the frozen Mordred sinisterly, you are nothing. With a push, Mordred was sent skidding. Mordred roared defiantly, well, then. Let's see you counter this. A red light covered the area. Mordred smiled. This time, for sure, Marin will be no match. Boost. The light dissipated and Mordred was in a red draconic armor. Mordred smiled victoriously. All the years, ever since he brought down the downfall of Camelot, he killed every single one that would become the Red Dragon Emperor until finally, he was chosen. The sacrificed and lives taken were worth the power he got. Boost. 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 Here, I'll destroy you with this blast. Mordred created a small magic circle that quickly winked out of existence. What? Mordred stiffened when he saw Issei no longer in front of him. Instead, he turned around and saw Issei leaning in a strange way, licking his fingertips like there was leftovers of a delicious food. Mordred couldn't help but gulp at how the bright blue eyes of Issei reflected the moonlight, it was both beautiful and terrifying. Thank you for that meal. Being sent to a dark future really took its toll on me. Issei laughed darkly, covering his eyes. When he removed them, his eyes scared Mordred, they resembled the eyes of Arthur when he found someone guilty of a crime. Really, I only pushed you because I don't have that much magic to blow your heart out. Oh, wait, you don't have a heart in the first place, right? So that would be useless then. Issei sadistically cupped his chin and looked at the moon in wonder, maybe I can crush your skull, or pull your guts out. That would be a fitting death to someone as vile as you, don't you think so? At least, you gave me the quarter of my full powers. Though it is a bit disappointing that is all the Red Dragon Emperor managed to accumulate, and adding your natural affinity to magic I expected more. Issei mocked. Mordred felt anger burn through his chest. The push was enough to make him feel woozy and gave him a hard time to breathe, and the energy he had a while ago was enough to blow the whole archipelago of Albion. It was impossible. And yet, not a single sliver of doubt was in Mordred when Issei said that his powers were only a quarter to his. Really, Mordred? I can't see how you managed to get the Welsh dragon, you are too unworthy. Mordred breathed in deeply, gathering his courage, before stomping towards Issei angrily. I am still your teacher, boy. You will show me some respect. It is true that you taught me magic. Mordred tried to move, but a huge magic circle appeared above him, and suddenly, the gravity above him came down upon him. A wide crater was instantly created, and his arms and legs were buried to the ground the deepest. Mordred panicked. He can remember this spell. Not even a million years can remove the memory of this spell getting used in the battlefield by Merlin. The armors of the enemy army was the one that killed them. The aftermath was terrifying. The blood was squished out of the bodies, and he was skeptical whether the left behinds were really the bodies of the enemy and not pancakes. Now that he has gained more power, he is not to be killed by this spell. Though escaping this spell was a different case altogether. So let me show you magic in return. Mordred looked at Issei, struggling. Issei raised his arms and above the large magic circle that pushed Mordred down, countless more of different sizes, but same yellow color appeared before Issei brought down his arms. What do you mean, king of all weapons and all magic? Azazel asked, writing down notes at the fascinating information he was getting. Merlin has a special ability in him, and that is to create his spells with his magic, and that he can only use. At the age of 14, he traveled around the kingdoms with his brother and us, going to our libraries and studying our magic. At first, we doubted it as a magician can only use one type of magic, but Merlin proved us wrong. Vivienne sipped her coffee. You see, the 5 kingdoms have their respective types of magic. Camelot has a setting type magic, and personally, the magic I most favor. These are spells that creates traps. There are many Camelot spells, but Merlin created the 10 finest, and only he can use it. This he did to other kingdoms also. My kingdom, Reaged, uses summoning type magic. Merlin managed to get the legendary beasts of the 10 elements to love and support him and him alone. To Elmet, the defensive type magic, he created the 10 finest barriers again. To the enhancing type magic, the magic of the kingdom of Dift, only one spell was known, and that is the strength enhancing spell. But Merlin discovered the 9 others, but he refused to share it not because of his greed, but because it would tip the balance of power. And of course, Anglia, which was attack type magic. He created his 10 own spells that enabled him to defy the laws of magic and use a spell already being used 100 times at the same time. Azazel broke the tip of his pencil at this, removing his glasses and staring at Vivienne, who seemed rather pleased with his reaction. Not even Raphael could do that. That's absurd. And yet, the castle of Morgana was destroyed by the continuous downfall of thunder. Normally, the weakness of thunder is earth, and earth is the main composition of a castle. Yet, he destroyed it by multiplying the power of a single downfall of lightning bolts by 1,000. If only you've seen it, you would be struck, Vivienne winked at Azazel, with awe. The whole army of Morgana and Morgana herself were turned to ashes by how much the thunderbolts were repeated, and the castle of Morgana was nothing but dust and ashes. Vivienne smiled at the two. So that is what you meant by king of all magic. That's not all. Vivienne chuckled at Azazel, who cited how powerful her little brother was. Mastering the magic of the 5 kingdoms doesn't make you king of all magic. There are many more types of magic, like the magic of the eastern kingdom of Shu or the mighty Mongolian kingdom. If Merlin sees a magic 3 times, all the spell that magic contains, he knows and can use perfectly. And he can even add his own version of the spells that, based by my experiences, outshines the original spells greatly. Azazel sighed, breaking the tip of his pencil again in shock. Let me guess, by king of all weapons, he can master a weapon by holding it. Azazel looked at Vivienne lazily. But the laziness was soon gone when Vivienne merely smiled her enamoring sly smile. Azazel shook his head, you have to be kidding me. He grabbed his face. That's just unfair. He can defeat someone who spent years of learning just to get to a certain level by holding the weapon. Vivienne smiled sadly, I wished it was that simple. Merlin spent 3 years of his life with the gods and goddesses of the Celtics just so he could study what magic is exactly. He explained to us that he merely traced the roots of magic and created his own spell that would enable him to study that magic quickly. Once he realized he can't rely on magic altogether, he once again isolated himself on top of the Camelot watchtower for a year to study the root of fighting and created a way of some sort that would enable him to figure out how to use a weapon most efficiently by holding it, studying its weight, its length, and its special attributes. Vivienne laughed, I really don't know, that boy was such a workaholic that Arthur had to break down the door and pull him by the ear to get him back. Amazing. Valia muttered. Amazing indeed. But there are consequences of being too powerful and being too kind at the same time. Vivienne's mood fell greatly at this. The two noticed this, and so Azazel sharpened his pencil quickly, waiting for the next words. He hated wars and battles. Hated killing and bloodshed. He hated how people suffered because of war. He shared this sentiment with his older brother. And though his older brother was also fairly powerful, Arthur can't win a battle alone. But Merlin can. Vivienne's eyes were shining with guilt. If only we were powerful enough, but we weren't. At least at that time. And so, because Merlin didn't want anyone in our side to die, he broke his sentiment and instead changed it to kill the ones that wanted to kill his loved ones. And that he did. He loved Camelot, Arthur, and us so much that he raised a barrier around Camelot on the great battle of taking Albion. Arthur was stricken to see the 4 armies matching for us 4 and his baby brother standing in front of them. But he wasn't afraid for his brother's safety. He was afraid for his brother's sanity. And he was right to do so after I saw what the boy I treated as a younger brother can do for us. He summoned all 10 great beasts around Camelot. But the armies didn't even reach the great beasts. Merlin didn't move from the spot he was standing from either. He set up spells of Camelot that covered a wide area and battalions fell like dominoes. And when the enemy were fleeing, he finished them off by gathering the spears of their fallen comrades, and even when they were beyond the horizon of Issei, we can see from the castle that he aimed for their hearts. His accuracy was too inhuman. Vivienne narrated. Sadly, the feast held for the victory of the warlock wasn't attended by Merlin. Arthur told us that Merlin sealed the door this time, laughing sadly, and he heard his brother crying. Though he won the war, he lost a part of his sanity. The number of lives he took that day 800,000. And the number of fleeing units he impaled himself were 10,000. He moved like a blur and killed like a war god. Vivienne grinned, but it was forced. At least the four kingdoms didn't dare defy Arthur ever until we foolishly betrayed our hearts, our little brother, and the love of our life. Azazel looked at Vivienne and sensed great sorrow flowing from her. But before he can comfort her, she stood up and ran out the stairs. Azazel looked at Valia, who nodded before they took after her. The three ran up the stairs of the Grigori headquarters and went to the highest floor. Azazel dropped to his knees in disbelief at the sight of thousands of magic circles with identical runes, but differentiating sizes aligned until they had reached the skies, and thunder rumbled from above. Vivienne bit her lip, her eyes watery. That is one of his spells. I can't remember what it was called, but it was used to destroy the castle of Morgana like I told you before. This is meant for a single person. The magic circles he used that day were a lot more wider than those. You weren't exaggerating at all, Azazel stated numbly as he watched the thunders rumble. Whoever the foolish person is to anger Merlin like this is, I sure hope he dies at the first strike. Vivienne croaked in pity. The three watched as a lightning so wide and sharp descended through the alignment of the magic circles and lit the whole city skies yellow. After a few seconds, another lightning descended and another one. The pace got more rapid until their ears rang and the air stung. A magic circle from bottom to top disappeared at every strike of lightning. Please, stop. I can tell you something that can resurrect your brother. Mordred, whose skin was toasted and clothes burned, cried. Issei stared at the burned body, and what's that? A stone buried at the center of a place called Stonehenge. Thank you for the information. Issei bowed his head, but once he looked up, Mordred knew that he wasn't sane anymore. The smile, the eyes, they were murderous. Now, please go to hell. The rapid fall of lightning continued. This is all my fault. Merlin, the great warlock of Camelot, staggered in an alleyway and leaned on the moist brick wall that had creative art on them. His eyes were shining with tears as he gritted his teeth, in pain. Emotionally. He turned to his back and slowly slid down to the ground, burying his head between his knees and sobbing. His tears dripped down a dirty puddle of water. If only he hadn't pursued his thirst for knowing more, then he would have been able to prevent the downfall of the kingdom he loved so much and the family he gave his all to protect. Ah, how ironic. He was trying to find more spells, growing stronger, improving his technique, and expanding the variety of his spells so he can protect his siblings. But the study only led to the one he was trying to prevent. He wiped his tears and sniffed, standing up. His eyes were no longer watery. Instead, they burned with determination. Just you wait, my dear brother. I shall crush whoever dares to stand in my way. He smiled as the sound of footsteps neared him. Starting with foolish mortals who judges books by their covers. The mad wizard turned around. The group of 5 thugs smiled at the wizard wearing a cloak. They were all around 30 tall and looked like they were drunk. The seemingly leader of the group leaned forward, hands in his pockets, before pulling back the hood of the cloak. Issei's expression remained passive, returning the man's look calmly. One of the men flipped a knife and laughed boorishly. Well, won't you look at that? A pretty boy. Useless. I hoped it was a girl. He flipped his knife. The blade glinted ever so slightly. Oh well. I guess I can find pleasure in making this kid quiver in fear. The others laughed in agreement with their friend's suggestion. Stupid mortals. What was that? The leader looked at Issei, who was slightly shorter than him. His tough guy composure was instantly broken at the sight of the psychotic smile on the boy's face. I guess I can quench a bit of my bloodlust before I go to Stonehenge. He chuckled. The group fell silent at the chuckle. It was like he was the one having the upper hand. But then, although they should be insulted, they felt like running. Despite all the years that has gone by, the memory of the bright smile, the only other man she loved besides her husband, remained fresh in her mind. It was a very peaceful and happy memory, unlike the others that followed, yet it was the memory that brought her the greatest sadness. Whenever the smile flashed in her mind, she can't help but grip her chest that felt like it was suddenly constricted. The bitterness in her throat that she tried to swallow but could not. The wobbling of her knees, as if her strength enough to terrify the most powerful of enemies, suddenly abandoned her. How can I be so gullible? Amelia said to herself as she flew through the cold night sky. Despite the serene sights of the city light, she felt like she was in a very complex battlefield. Amelia remembered the happy time in her life when she was married to a very handsome, kind, and loving king. The time when a little brother of hers buried his nose between his book, annoyed at his 3 other sisters that poked at his ticklish areas. The times when her family took morning walks in the royal garden while her beloved Arthur played the lute, making a bizarre melody that made everything seem magical. She destroyed that. Together with her 3 other sisters. Blinded by revenge, not being able to see that they did not have to see their original missions to the end, ignoring the happiness they felt and waving it off as fake. Amelia held her hands that were shaking. She can't remember how she managed to kill Arthur. She smiled bitterly as she cried, flying the fastest she can to try and save the only other man she loved. The brother of Arthur, her three other sister, and hers Merlin. And if the price was her life, then be it. She doesn't want to live anymore anyways. In the middle of the green meadows, a slice appeared. It widened into a portal and out stepped a skeleton, wearing a black suit and holding a scythe. He knew it was inevitable, yet he couldn't help but be saddened at what is to happen. He is to greet his beloved student, almost a son to him, after many years, and they will fight with all they have. He chuckled a coarse chuckle. That was so wrong. As if he can actually stand against the prodigy equally. Not even he, despite the great power he wields, can stand against his student. No, he was to try to stay alive as the fool make quick work of him. He had absolutely no chance in winning the impending battle ahead. Even so, he will do everything to at least buy time until reinforcements arrive. Not that the reinforcement will be of much help either. F shook his head as he laughed sadly. Issei, huh? Not a bad name. While he was harvesting the souls for that hour, a great surge of unrealistic power appeared in a certain part of Japan. A power he was sure none can possibly match and belonged only to the warlock he taught many years ago. For the longest time, he cried in happiness. He was so happy that he abandoned his task and quickly appeared to the sight. He looked almost crazy as his student screamed in pain in between a large golden magic circle while he danced. Even he himself laughed at the thought. But then, before he can approach the boy, a beautiful lady approached him first. An important rule for all the primordial beings of this world is that they are not allowed to interact with mortals. Merlin, or Issei, of course was a special case. It wasn't every day you meet a mortal that can destroy the world. He tried his hardest not to chortle at the sight of his student's terrible lying, almost like an angel's. Death was sure that in another universe, this boy was an angel, with another reality-threatening power. After the Lucifer gave him a name, he planned on making his entrance. But before he can tear a portal open, the most disgusting and his most hated man in the whole world appeared. This made things complicated. He stood, helpless, as his own student descended right in front of him into insanity, and he can't do anything because of the laws. That ungrateful brat made me cry 2 times. Death, crying. Ridiculous. Despite the statement, his tone was tired. It was unavoidable. Issei will come for his gem and force him to resurrect his brother. His musings were finally cut short and his skeleton face turned slack. Hello, my dearest teacher. The smile on Issei's face was genuine. It was a real smile of happiness. No bloodlust whatsoever. It was perfect. For a moment, the darkness in Issei's heart was lifted by seeing his teacher who taught him all the basic knowledge he needed. It took every fiber of his being not to run towards his teacher and hug him. Though Death was a skeleton, albeit a nigh unbreakable one, he was warm to hug. Issei knew this very well as whenever he was frustrated with his studies, his teacher, who was like a father to him, comforted him. Death wanted to scream at him angrily. Give him a lecture or something boring. But instead, he was left speechless. He cannot stop the smile from forming on his skeletal face. Issei. You know my name here? I know a lot of things, boy. Issei chuckled. Of course you do. They were wasting time. Issei knew that. But he can't help but be happy at the sight of his teacher. Old man, I don't want to fight you, you know. You are like the father figure in my life after my father died. Just give it to me. He pleaded. Death grunted. Those eyes of yours won't work on me now. Curse. Wrong, Death spun his scythe before firmly planting its butt down the ground. You must think of this carefully, Issei. You already broke one law, Issei. This law is second only to the law of life and me. The law you broke was the law of time, Issei. He knew this was coming. The only one who knew of his conquest was Death, who so feverishly tried to convince him to not do this. Of course he did not listen as he was stubborn. I know that. He didn't want to, but he whined like a child. And I regret everything I have done now. My kingdom is in ruins and my family is broken. If only I listened to you then all this wouldn't have happened. Exactly. Issei sighed, at least sympathize. Right. Sorry. Death muttered, his chuckles he tried to hide with coughing. Issei, it is good that you understand what you have done is wrong. It is good that you regret it. But consequences are consequences. You broke the law of time, Issei. You are lucky time didn't hunt you down. Issei laughed arrogantly, let him try. I'll smash his little wooden clock to his face. I know you can. Even we are no match for you. Death replied gently, before grinning. Arrogance really doesn't suit you. Issei rolled his eyes, but smiled. I know. Issei, don't do this. I warned you, haven't I? Not even you are above the law of the universe. They are obsolete. Even the God of the Bible knew that. With more time, I can find a way. Issei, are you even listening? Death snapped. Issei looked at him in surprise. Despite how powerful he is, Issei will always respect and look up to Death. That is why he value the opinion of death the most. But even if it pains him to do, he will defy even death. Believe me, old man, I am. But I will do study even the forbidden magics of this world if those are necessary to my goal of resurrecting my king. Death sighed. You are still as stubborn as ever. Issei gave his teacher a sad smile before he closed his eyes. And when they opened, it finally begun. Death snapped his fingers. His soul-reaping scythe spun quickly in mid-air before splitting until there were at least 7 of them. The look in Issei's eyes were not his. It was his insane side. He too grew wary of. The result of all the heartbreaks and being forced to slaughter 4 armies in such a young age. Insanity. Death hissed at his situation. He never liked fighting a battle he cannot win. Issei looked through the long dark hallway, dimly lit by violet torches. By his hand was the scythe of his teacher. The lightness and deadliness of the weapon, now that he held it, it amazed him. He can easily slice through the skeleton army. Death prepared to protect the portal between life and death. In order to resurrect his brother, he had to go to the portal of life and death. Issei didn't bother to look at the skeleton warrior beside him as he sliced it in half. It turned to dust. His sight was focused on the small light at the end of the corridor, a very long corridor littered with traps and ambushes by skeleton warriors. Death was very wise, indeed. He knew Issei was too powerful, and he knew that he is no match for him, and so his goal was to wear him down as much as possible. And though these skeleton warriors are no near a match for him individually, in numbers come power, so they say. The corridor was very long, it is possible for him to grow exhausted. The swords of the warriors can't kill him, but rather, they are energy-sipping swords. This might have work. But I could always slice a portal with this scythe of yours, old man. Issei, stop. Issei froze in place at the voice. A voice familiar and one belonging to someone he used to cherish and one who fooled both his brother and him. It belonged to someone that allowed the innocent citizens of Camelot who his brother worked hard to protect get slaughtered. A sadistic smile formed on his Issei's face. Vivienne was near tears as she watched him turn around with the lovable smile he always had. Sis. Vivienne ran towards Issei happily, her arms wide open. But then, she noticed the sudden smirk on her brother's face. Before she can backtrack, her surroundings changed. She was holding her lance, and there was blood trickling down slowly from it to her gauntlets. The corridor was no longer. Her eyes widened. Her blood ran cold. She was foolish to think Issei will greet her with open arms after what she did. She was inside the throne room where they killed Arthur. The walls of the castle, the banner of Camelot, the red carpet she had sewn for their wedding. Everything was perfect. Then she looked down and remembered the blood. Her heart was gripped in fear. Her mouth shook as she slowly looked up and screamed a heart-piercing scream. There she was, exactly where they killed Arthur. The exact area where they impaled Arthur. But instead, it was her brother, smiling bitterly at her with tears streaming down his eyes. She immediately tried to move, to pull her lance out, but she can't. Her eyes were wide with terror, and tears were streaming down her face. She tried to put all her weight in her pull, but the lance wouldn't nudge. And she can't let go. Her breath hitched as Issei weakly lifted his hand and cupped her face gently. Why, Ni-chan? Insanity was evident in Vivienne's eyes. She knew what was happening. This was all a very complex illusion spell casted by Issei. He wasn't there when Arthur was killed, yet he knew the surroundings, and he didn't know the Japanese honorifics, therefore she, despite the state her mind was in, was able to deduce that Issei read through her memories with another of his spells. As expected of a queen. But despite the logical explanation she had, it seemed so real. This was her nightmare all these years. Merlin, no. Merlin. She sobbed. What have I done? Issei coughed out blood. Vivienne stared at her brother. Issei slowly looked up and tilted his head, smiling despite the blood trickling down his mouth. Vivienne broke. This was how Arthur looked in his last moments. Ni-chan, you loved us, right? He asked. Of course I did. I still do. But that wasn't the answer that came out of her mouth. Both you and your brother are fools to ever believe that we loved you. Much to her terror, her body moved on its own and pulled the lance out. Blood quickly came out of Issei's mouth. Faster than she can process, the lance was back where it was, skewering her brother. Issei, stop this illusion. She cried, begging. Ni-chan, he croaked painfully, before hanging his head low and seemingly dying. Vivienne screamed brokenly. Issei coldly stared at his beloved sister. Vivienne was passed out and screaming, tears falling down her cheeks and her hair disheveled. Issei forced himself to avert his gaze, before gritting his teeth angrily and hitting his head. Why? He screamed before falling down his knees and slamming the ground angrily with his fists. He can't understand why it still pains him to see the state of Vivienne. She betrayed his brother. Yet whenever she screams, he feels like his heart is being pulled out. He roared angrily at the ceiling, his scream echoing throughout the dark hallway. I don't love her anymore. he said to himself, as if to convince. Issei opened a portal with Death's Eye and was about to step in when he heard the skeleton warriors walking. Issei turned around, his eyes dull. They were approaching his crying sister. Good for her. But when the skeletons were about to hit her, they all got turned to dust as a furious Issei waved his hands. He gently picked up Vivian. He looked like he himself was about to cry as he wiped the tears of his sister's face and entered the portal. Issei was greeted with the sight of the large portal that glowed brightly. He walked near a wall and gently placed Vivian down and sat down beside her. She wasn't screaming anymore. Besides the sniffing of the Night Queen, the place was silent. Issei looked at the opposite wall, pained and confused. He was angry at his sisters, yet he couldn't bring himself to make them suffer. He couldn't leave her for herself. The swords may only drain energy, but when a powerful individual is drained of energy, the individual will become as vulnerable as an ordinary human. Ordinary humans won't be able to survive even a cut from the energy-sipping swords. Damn it. Aside from the Japanese language and culture and the history of what happened to Camelot, very extraordinary and weird things happened to her sister. A tear fell down his cheek. He learned that Vivian was the only sister and sibling he had left in this world of the living. Out of desperation, guilt and love for his brother, they killed themselves after a year. Only Vivian was left. And the reason broke Issei's heart and only added to the whirlwind of emotions he had inside him. She lived for him. She badly wanted to follow her sisters and meet her beloved once again, but she waited for him. She didn't want him to suddenly wake up to a reality where the kingdom is gone and so is his family. Issei ran his hands through his hair and pulled on it, screaming. I'd get back at life. She made a mistake to mess with me and my family. Issei swore. But the words of his teacher echoed in his mind. Perhaps, he did deserve this. He broke a law sacred to all magic casters. Though the primordials, like death and time, were quite sure no one can violate the laws, since there were no one strong enough to ever break them, these were followed by all, absolutely. Then he came. Someone strong enough to defy the laws, and not even they can punish him. He was sure time wasn't the one that let his family broken. He knew. He just didn't want to accept the fact that it was his fault. Merlin? Vivian croaked, her voice in pain. Issei snapped out of his thoughts and quickly stood up, walking back and bowing in the way he saw Japanese people do inside the memories of his sister. I'm sorry, sister. I can't control myself. I wanted someone to blame when the one who is at fault was me in the first place. I was just so angry and shocked that this was what happened to the kingdom we worked to protect. And most of all, what happened to the siblings that I loved so dearly. Vivian's eyes began to water as she saw the tears that were dripping down the face of her little brother. I'm very sore. Issei froze. He missed this. The warm hug of the gentlest sister he had. How could he do that to his kindest big sister that cared for him so much? Issei felt like he was a child once again as she rubbed his back and hushed his cries despite crying herself. He cried at the ridiculousness of the situation. It isn't your fault, Merlin. She sniffed. Oni-san. He croaked as he buried his face onto her hair that smelled like the flowers of the royal garden of Camelot. I love you, Merlin, my sweet little brother. Issei cried as he remembered how she always whispered that when he was having nightmares regarding the slaughter he had committed. I love you too, Oni-san. Azazel was right. It is quite cute. Vivian chuckled. You have no idea how much I have waited for you to call me that. The two separated and Issei smiled. I read your mind, remember? He added. So that's what you do every Saturday when I see your door locked back in Camelot and I can't find Ani-chan. Vivian blushed. That was the private time she had with Arthur. Merlin, privacy. Sorry. Before the other can say anything, the barrier between life and death suddenly glowed golden. A powerful burst of air came out of the portal. Hello, hello. A deep voice greeted, singing them. Issei and Vivian shared a surprised look. Both were surprised when they turned around to see Arthur, together with their three other sisters. Issei fell back in shock. Why are dressed like that? Arthur looked at his brother dully. Really? After learning that I died, the first thing you ask is my clothing? You look weird. Whatever. Arthur waved off, blushing. I thought showing myself wearing a toga was cool, heavenly and all that tch. Arthur? Vivian asked disbelievingly. The dull look on Arthur's eyes were gone as he looked at his near-to-tears wife lovingly. He really did miss these two. Not a day passed by without you drifting to my mind, my ever-so-lovely Lance. Vivian launched herself towards the open arms of Arthur, and the two hugged each other. She buried her face to her chest and wept. Arthur closed his eyes and happily smiled as he stroked her hair. Issei stood up and sighed contentedly at the sight of the two, before turning his gaze towards the three beautiful ladies that avoided his eyes. He smiled gently at them. Sisters. The three didn't move an inch. Arthur silently watched them while still stroking the hair of the weeping Vivian. Merlin Leone winced, her brown eyes teary. Whale, the queen of the sword, was too saddened to approach her little brother or even utter anything. She would once in a while look up her brother with her piercing red eyes, then look down again. Meanwhile, Svanhild turned around, her body quivering. Only her straight white hair that reached her hips can be seen. Issei wryly smiled at this. Svanhild always acted tough and only gave everyone besides Arthur small smiles. She didn't like showing her emotions. Brushing the strand of black hair that fell out of her ponytail, Gwayle steeled her nerves and stepped forward. But then, her knees froze, remembering what she has done, and shame filled her, freezing her once again. Merlin, she whimpered, biting her lips and holding back her tears, "Your big sister is very sorry for being unwise. I will let you kill me if only I was not dead, I will gladly." Her eyes widened. The last thing she expected for her little brother to do was to hug her and cry. She couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears cascaded down her cheeks as she hugged her little brother back and apologized brokenly. She felt like Issei was a child once more. Arthur smiled happily, watching his family slowly getting stitched back together. Vivienne only cried even more when she heard others cry. Leon approached the two. Noticing her reluctance, with his big sister crying as he hugged her, he opened his other arm and smiled at Leon, who quickly encased the two with a hug of her own and cried. "Geez, crybabies," Arthur complained, before smiling and patting the head of Vivienne, whose cries turned to sniffles. Minutes passed and the two weeping ladies encased by his hug stopped crying and instead had peaceful smiles on their faces as they cherished the warmth only their little brother can bring them. Issei rubbed their backs and the three shared a look as they looked at the only one standing alone. Issei walked towards Svanhild and patted her head gently. Now, Wani-chan. Your little brother is here to comfort you." Svanhild cutely pouted, her face like a child about to cry. "Stupid, don't reverse our roles." Then she met Merlin's eyes and smiled. "I always hated the fact that you were taller than us four, even though we are older than you." "That's just how it is," Issei replied cheekily before hugging his sister. As the always cold Svanhild cried on his brother's chest, Arthur was rubbing the back of his head, clueless. "What is Wani-chan?" Vivienne rolled her eyes and smiled. "You had so many years in the afterlife and not even once have you thought of studying other languages." "Hey." Arthur crossed his arms and sulked. "It's not like those three studied other languages." "I studied ancient Norse," Svanhild said in between her sniffs. Whale victoriously smiled. "I studied Latin." Leon raised her hand happily, jumping. "I studied ancient Greek." Vivienne raised a brow and looked at Arthur expectantly. "PSH, so what? Those languages are dead." Arthur huffed. Arthur's sweat dropped as his little brother wagged his finger at him. TSK. Right. The time I managed to plead with the angels of heaven is almost up." Arthur smiled half-heartedly as he saw his girls get depressed. "By the way," Vivienne wondered. "How are we four allowed in heaven?" "I mean," she smiled bitterly at her fellow queens. "We did betray the king of a holy kingdom that is blessed by the Almighty Father himself, and we failed to prevent the slaughter of Camelot citizen. Even if you two forgive us, we four still did that." Arthur smiled gently at Vivienne and grabbed her hand, making her twirl to a dance and dipping her to the ground, their noses inches apart. Vivienne's face were red as she stared at the smile Arthur had. "I agreed to trade Excalibur." "What?" Gwayle screamed. "Who is the current possessor?" asked Issei. The four sighed as Arthur shrugged lazily. "I don't know." Before smiling, "Just kidding. They broke it to pieces." "What?" It was Vivienne's turn. "That was a gift from God himself. That's like the greatest blessing a king can know, not only a king, but anyone can receive. Why would you give that up?" Leon asked, looking at Arthur like he was crazy. Arthur laughed gently, the laugh that made the citizens of Camelot love him so much and puts anyone at ease. "You guys are right. That was bestowed upon me by God himself. But you guys are also wrong. The greatest gift God gave me is my 4 beautiful wives and my confusing brother." "What a Casanova." Gwayle puffed, turning around with a blush. Arthur laughed as the four simultaneously snuggled up at him while Issei gave him a thumbs up. He really did miss this. His beloved queens complete and his shy brother, together once again. He'd give up Excalibur a million times for this. Something suddenly popped into his mind. "Merlin, I talked with time." Issei groaned. Was he angry at me? No, far from that, actually. He never would have thought that anyone would be powerful and intelligent enough to build a portal across time. His law is the hardest law to break, after all. Death and life's law is easier since there is already a portal made. Arthur motioned at the large open gate that was the portal. And he was sorry for what happened. "And what will happen?" "What do you mean?" He said, "In order to survive in another time, the strand of life the person has will have to be wrapped around another's in that time. Since you are still alive, then you already wrapped yours with someone else's." Fear gripped Issei's heart. He was intelligent, after all. Already, there were several theories in how this happens in his mind, and all of them weren't pretty. And there was a certain one nagging him. How does this work? The first person you make eye contact with in that time. Arthur and his wives were surprised when Issei fell back the ground, cursing. Time reminded me to warn you that when you bond with someone in this time, you two can never be too far from each other lest quickly draining your energies and killing yourselves. Furthermore, due to your powerful aura, powerful monsters or even legendary monsters you have killed and were reincarnated or resurrected are to chase after that person. Just as he feared, the life of the silver-haired empress that he met was in danger. Because of him. Issei gripped the death scythe, bitterly biting his lips. He probably didn't feel the effects since he had very high energy capacity, even higher than a pantheon of gods. But Vali, though her energy capacity was higher than the average supernatural being since she is, after all, the chosen host of Albion, she is still in danger. There might even be a monster attacking her, wherever she is right now. Vivian Onichan, where is Vali right now? Issei asked hurriedly. Raising her brow, she looked at the red cheeks her little brother had, before realization struck her, and she quickly covered her mouth, laughing. Issei realized how bold he was after here at her mind, learning the Japanese culture. Serves you right. She said, but softly while patting her little brother's head that it made Issei pity himself even more. She's in the Grigori HQ so she's safe there. You still need to hurry though, her energy might be running low by now. Issei, his eyes still determined, walked up to each queen and gave them each a kiss on the cheek and gave his brother a manly hug. This is goodbye for now, I guess. Indeed. Your job is not yet done, Issei. Arthur said seriously. You better not follow us in heaven unless you want to plummet down to earth back again with broken limbs. Issei jogged away his siblings before turning around with tears in his eyes. But these tears were no longer of sadness, desperation, or anger but happiness. As you wish, my king. The 5 royalties of Camelot watched their warlock jog for a few distances before hitting his head lightly, scolding himself, and slicing a portal open. The queens giggled and Arthur shook his head while smiling. There goes my brother. He said. I can finally cry. The last thing Issei heard was the childish crying of Arthur, that he was this small when I first saw him. Shout, and the giggles and hushes made by the queens of Camelot before he finally entered. I wonder how he is right now. She tried every sleeping technique she knows, even going so far as to ask a fallen angel to cast a sleeping spell on her, but she just couldn't sleep. Vali, having her chin propped on top of her palm and looking out the window of the room she stayed in whenever she was at Grigori, looked at the empty beach that the headquarters had. Her hair was being held back by a ponytail, a few strands falling to her face. A bit sad yet peaceful was the sight of the serene waters, reflecting the beautiful moon. Every time she closes her eyes, the image of the smiling boy she met always appeared in her mind. She sighed, her eyes showing her worry. I hope he is okay. Don't worry about that guy, Vali. The silver-haired empress gave a tired smile to no one in particular. I doubt that monster is going to die. Albion. Vali called gently. Do you want to be like my father? Albion choked. No, I'm sorry. Your father is a fool. Vali turned back to the beach and sighed. There were so many things happening at the moment. She ran away from her abusive father and her eccentric and merciless grandfather that called her a monster. She met a powerful warlock that traveled in time and, not accepting what happened as time passed, is now on a rampage. Azazel was to take her under his wing and move her to a place called Kuo. And she can't sleep. Issei. Standing up, Vali stretched up and yawned, walking towards the overly pink king-size bed Azazel prepared for her. Good night, Albion. You said that 100 times and you are still not asleep. Vali rolled her eyes. Fine, good night. Her lips curled to a happy smile before a painful jolt in her head made her drop to the center of the room. She can't help but scream when her whole body felt like it was burning, freezing, and getting electrocuted all at the same time. Albion too was screaming in pain. Albion. I'm fine. He said, his struggle evident. Worry of yourself, young lady. The sound of a door slamming open was heard by Vali before she was turned around and laid on the laps of Azazel who was obviously panicking. What happened? He asked, hissing at how high the temperature Vali had was. I don't know. Vali whispered, her teeth gritted out of pain, her eyes near closing. Her face was red from the heat. I don't know if it will fit, but try playing The Legend of the Four Dragons in the Akatsuki no Yona soundtrack. Azazel quickly turned to the window that flew open and stared with eyes wide open as a handsome young man with unruly brown hair, glaring angrily at what was happening to Vali. His hair was dimly illuminated by the moonlight and his eyes that were blue quickly turned golden that glowed enchantingly in the dark. Azazel was sure that with his looks and the gentle yet mystical air he had around himself can make any girl or even men fall in love with him without so much as a look. A very powerful aura was surrounding the man. This was no doubt the warlock of Camelot, Merlin. Before the fallen angel could react, Issei rushed towards Valia's side. "Do you know what to do?" Azazel asked. He would ask questions later. It may not seem like it, but he cared deeply for Valia as he considered her his own daughter. "Yes," he said quickly. Intrigued was Azazel with how the wizard's eyes that showed power were showing desperation at the same time. What he did next almost gave Azazel an heart attack. Issei gently placed his left hand on Valia's nape, brushed the strands on her face before. He placed his lips onto hers. And. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.